They have contacts, but the governments don't really readily give this out anymore. It's getting harder and harder to get very accurate information. But historically, we know that right about now there's something between 15 and 16,000 intact nuclear weapons in the world in a global nuclear arsenal. And the U.S. and Russia probably have 15 out of the 16,000, let's say. And you mentioned that 93% in your opening. That's about right. So that's why it's so important to focus on the U.S. and Russia, because first of all, the country that comes in next is France with 300. And so there's orders of, it's so many more times greater, numbers that the U.S. and Russia have compared to anybody else. That's where you have to start. Now, if you look at what the weapons are, we each have, U.S. and Russia each have approximately 2,000 nuclear weapons that are deployed for immediate use. So a lot of them are kept in reserve. But 2,000 weapons each would be more than enough to wipe out the human race.
Really?
Yeah. And of these, the U.S. and Russia each have about 1,000 strategic nuclear weapons. They call them launch ready. They're ballistic missiles that are armed with nuclear warheads. They can be launched in 2 to 15 minutes. And once they're launched, they can't be recalled. And as you mentioned earlier, it takes 30 minutes to as little as 9 to 10 minutes for them to reach their targets.
I had heard years ago that by mutual agreement, I was always in real doubt about this, but by mutual agreement, we had both retargeted all of our ICBMs into the water, into the ocean.
Yes, that was a kind of a PR ploy that Clinton and Yeltsin had. Clinton repeated it quite a bit during one of his election campaigns. But the reality of nuclear targeting is that it takes about 10 seconds to retarget a warhead. All these missiles are hooked up to computers. It was a meaningless agreement. The only way to really change this is to stand down these weapons, make it first so that they can't be launched within a few minutes. And then, but better, let's dismantle them, take the warheads off the missiles. We have to start thinking of this as a problem for our species.
Oh, I do. I think of it as a problem for our species.
Well, the people in charge don't, I think. I think they're so caught up in the moment. The scientists have tried to discuss these studies they're called peer-reviewed studies. They're the best studies that can be done in science. They publish them and they're criticized by all the best scientists in the world. And if they can't find anything wrong with it, then they go into a journal. And these have been out there for 7 or 8 years, and they predict that, even what you would call a successful first strike, let's say that the U.S. launched and destroyed every Russian strategic nuclear weapon, every nuclear weapon that could be launched against the United States.
Right.
Well, the environmental consequences of that successful first strike would cause everybody in the United States to starve to death, along with everybody else in the world. So it's a self-destruct mechanism for the human race. The scientists wrote an article called Self-Assured Destruction, which you would compare that to mutual assured. It's actually, all along, it's been self-assured.
Right, a little bit, slow down a little bit. You said, even if we had a successful first launch against Russia, that we would starve to death. How does that happen?
Well, the mechanism is that nuclear weapons are really like a piece of the sun when they detonate. And this goes for the bomb that destroyed Hiroshima, which was 15,000 tons of TNT explosive equivalent, to average, say, Russian strategic warhead that has 800,000 tons of TNT. That's what's normal today. But both of those when the fireball they create, the surface of that fireball is hotter than the surface of the sun. So what happens then, if that's detonated over or above a city, it will ignite everything within a radius. The 15 kiloton weapon sets 3 to 5 square miles on fire instantly. The 800 kiloton warhead will set 90 to 152 square miles on fire instantly. And all these, what happens is there's fire set over this whole area. It's a mass fire. And within 10 to 15 minutes, it coalesces. They all join together to form a single gigantic fire. In the center of the fire, there's like a chimney effect that rises up, and it creates hurricane-force winds that blow towards the center of the fire. So it'll actually be strong enough to uproot trees and pull into the fire. You can't, and anyone in the fire zone, in a matter of minutes, the air temperature is good above the boiling temperature of water. And, we first saw a mass fire like this in Dresden and Hamburg and Stuttgart during World War II when the British firebombed the German cities.
Oh, yes.
They weren't even able to go into those cities for quite a few days in tracked vehicles. It was too hot. And even anybody that was in a deep shelter suffocated or baked, basically. It's horrible, but it's true. And so we firebombed Tokyo, for example, with conventional, fire bombs like napalm. 100,000 Japanese died in that raid. And then we went on to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Mm-hmm. So we basically crossed the moral threshold for blowing up, burning cities up. But so if you think about what a nuclear war is, if you think of like one 800 kiloton warhead with 150 square miles on fire, then you multiply that times hundreds or thousands, all within an hour's space of time. All those fires create enormous amounts of smoke and soot. The scientists have predicted that a U.S.-Russian strategic nuclear war would produce somewhere between 50 and 180 million tons of smoke. And this smoke will quickly rise above cloud level, which means it can't be rained out. And once it gets into the stratosphere, there are high winds. In a matter of 10 to 14 days, that smoke will completely encircle the Earth and engulf the Earth in a global stratospheric smoke layer. And this layer will do two things. Basically, it absorbs and blocks the sunlight. By absorbing it, it heats up the stratosphere, which destroys the protective ozone layer. And by blocking that sun, it prevents warming sunlight from reaching the surface of the Earth. And that, in a matter of a week, will produce temperatures colder than they were at the height of the last ice age 18,000 years ago. And the end result is that for 1 to 3 years, the temperatures in central North America and Eurasia will be below freezing every day.
All summer.
Yeah, all year, every single day of the year, and it'll stay cold for so long that will eliminate growing seasons for at least 10 years, maybe 20.
All right, let's back up just a little bit. You said if both arsenals were used. Let's say we just surprised Russia and decapitated them only, and they didn't have an opportunity really to strike back at us. What have you got then? Do we still have, because you were describing nuclear winter, right?
Yes. And we would still have nuclear winter. There might be, let's just say there's 50 million tons of smoke instead of 180 million.
Right.
It doesn't matter.